Princess Diana's life unfolded like a fairy tale, complete with an evil stepmother. But the iconic royal never did get her happy ending. From her traumatic childhood to her secret battles with her physical and mental health, poor Princess Di was trapped in a nightmare. Her childhood was far from a fairy tale. From the day she was born, the future princess struggled to find a place in her complicated family. The family and the monarchy went way back, and it put major pressure on Diana's parents to keep up appearances. Before Diana was born, her parents already had 2 daughters and were anxious for a son. In 1960, their wish was granted, but their baby boy died just 10 hours after his birth. By the time Diana was born, they were feeling the pressure, knowing that they needed to carry on the family bloodline. They were hopeful for another boy, but instead they had Diana. They were so unprepared that the future princess didn't even have a name for the first week of her life. Poor Diana always felt like a disappointment because she knew she wasn't able to replace the son they lost. Not to mention, her parents were totally dysfunctional. They had a pretty major age difference, and they were far from relationship goals. Stuck in an unhappy marriage, Diana's parents were unable to conceal their disastrous relationship from their kids. Diana later talked about seeing her parents in both verbal and physical fights. She recounted seeing her father slap her mother across her face while her mother cried. Talk about traumatizing. Finally, Diana's mother left her husband for another man. Can you blame her? But that wasn't the end of things, because the divorce got real ugly real fast. The terrible custody battle. Diana's old-school grandmother was horrified by her daughter's scandalous affair, and she made sure everyone knew it. She even testified against her own child in court, calling her an unfit mother. Harsh. As a result of her stone-cold decision, Diana's father won primary custody and kept Diana's visits with her mom to a minimum. Poor Diana was only 7 years old, and the divorce left her totally heartbroken. Her mother's absence was especially hard for her to deal with. As a young girl, she watched her mother packing her things and begged her not to leave. Her mother promised she'd come back to visit, but she never did. Apparently, young Diana used to sit on the steps for hours, waiting for someone who would never come home. Stuck in the middle, Diana constantly had to choose between her parents. She remembers being given 2 dresses to wear, one from her mom and one from her dad. Now, we love a new outfit, but this wasn't a simple gift. Diana knew that picking a dress meant picking a parent, and no matter what she chose, someone would end up hurt. Who knew choosing an outfit could be so high stakes? Even Diana's visits to her mother weren't happy ones. On their last night together, Diana's mother would always start to cry because she didn't want to see her children go. Seeing her mother so unhappy was super upsetting to young Diana. And her father's house wasn't any better. Diana's real-life evil stepmother. In the early days of her parents' divorce, Diana and her younger brother had a long line of young, pretty nannies. Turns out her dad was quite the bachelor, and plenty of women wanted to lock him down. Terrified that their nannies were trying to steal their father from them, Diana and her brother would try to scare them off, sticking pins in their chairs and even throwing their clothes out the window. And you thought your babysitting job was bad. But to Diana's annoyance, it didn't make a difference because her father went on to marry a socialite named Rain Lag. Rain and Diana had a well-known dislike for one another. It was so bad that Diana and her siblings weren't invited to the wedding or even informed that it was happening. Yikes. Diana made it clear that she was not on board with her new stepmother. She accused the woman of targeting her father and trying to take him away from his children. Diana also hated the way Rain and her father treated her mother. The conflict in the family grew until Diana spoke out at her brother's wedding, airing all their dirty laundry. This caused a major divide in the family. Apparently, her father and stepmother gave Di the cold shoulder for 6 months, and things were about to get a whole lot worse. Diana was doomed to repeat history. You know how Disney movies give us all unrealistic dating expectations? Diana fell for the same thing. Her unhappy childhood had her dreaming of a fairy tale romance. As a kid who always felt overlooked and ignored, she was obsessed with the idea of true love. This set her up for big trouble in her later years when she met her future husband. Like her parents, Diana and Prince Charles were over a decade apart. In fact, as a teenager, Charles once interrupted one of Diana's childhood tea parties. You know the saying, "Mother knows best"? In Diana's case, it was true. Her relationship with Charles set off alarm bells for Diana's mother, who noticed some parallels to her own doomed relationship. Unfortunately, no one listened to her warning, which could have spared Diana major pain down the road. Despite their age difference, Diana fell head over heels for Charles and the idea of being a princess. Who wouldn't? Not to mention, royals almost never got divorced. To a girl who had lived through parents' drama-filled split, that was probably a pretty big bonus. But despite her high hopes, Diana was far away from her happily ever after, and there was more trouble ahead than Diana could have ever imagined. Charles never loved her. When asked if he was in love with his bride-to-be, Charles just said, "Whatever love means anyway." Seriously? Men are the worst. The interview was humiliating for Diana, who was essentially rejected on national television, and we thought our last breakup was bad. All of these missteps gave Diana cold feet, but that didn't stop her from walking down the aisle. Apparently, her sisters stepped in to convince her to move forward with the wedding, and Diana decided to give Charles another chance. Unfortunately, marriage didn't fix the problems, it just made them worse. Prince Charles was in love with Camilla. Like her parents' marriage, Diana's great romance was set up to fail. Her fiancé was still in love with his ex, Camilla Parker Bowles, and he wasn't really trying to keep it a secret. Like we said before, men are the worst. Diana was heartbroken, but that didn't stop her from giving Camilla a piece of her mind. Although the princess claimed to be terrified of her husband's mistress, she approached her at a party and asked for a moment alone. In a Real Housewives-worthy showdown, Diana told Camilla that she knew exactly what was going on, and that wasn't all. Camilla told Diana to be happy because she already had everything she could ever want, but that wasn't good enough for Princess Di. She set Camilla straight, telling her that what she wanted was her husband. You've gotta hand it to Diana. No matter how many times she got knocked down, she kept fighting for her fairy tale. Diana's toxic relationship led to a hidden illness. During their engagement, Charles crossed a major line when he commented that Diana was starting to look a bit chubby. This man's mistakes just keep adding up. Now, we all know his comment is ridiculous, but it stuck with Diana, and it didn't let go. The poor girl was already comparing herself to her husband's former flame, and she was under a major media microscope. Now that she was being constantly hounded by the tabloids and forced to follow stricter and stricter standards of behavior, Diana's weight became the only thing she could control. In the weeks before her wedding, her waist dropped from 29 inches to 23. As we saw in The Crown, the young princess fell into a pattern of binging, and the unseen disease haunted her for years. In a later interview, Diana expressed that her struggles went unnoticed because her weight didn't drastically change, and no one was paying attention. And that wasn't the only invisible battle she was fighting. Following the birth of Prince William, Diana's mental and physical health took a steep dive. She found herself feeling broken and numb, unable to even get out of bed. To anyone who's been there, you know these are textbook symptoms of depression. Her in-laws hurt more than they helped. Diana had some well-known beef with the royal family. They were all about tradition and propriety, but Diana was warm and approachable. Not to mention, the press was obsessed with her. All of this caused some pretty major friction between Diana and her new family, so when her depression got bad, they did little to help. Despite Diana's obvious distress, she wasn't given the help she so desperately needed. She spoke out about the experience, revealing that despite her status, no one really listened to her. And although the royal family provided treatment, it wasn't the support she needed. Rather than compassion, Diana was judged and shamed, and people called her unstable and unbalanced. She hated those words, which would follow her for the rest of her life. This just added to Lady Di's pain. She had always wanted love and acceptance, and probably hoped to get it from her new family. But instead of supporting her, they just insulted her while shaming her for her struggle. The princess hurt herself. When her depression went untreated, her symptoms worsened, and eventually the princess began to take it out on herself. She injured her arms and legs, looking for help, but it was only seen as attention-seeking behavior. Even her husband, the man who was supposed to support her, wasn't able to understand what Diana was going through. And there was one more player in Diana's unhappy end. The press made Diana's life miserable. Diana's death was famously caused by a car accident that occurred while her intoxicated driver attempted to evade the paparazzi. It was a tragic end to her iconic life, but it wasn't the press's first offense. Turns out, they'd been causing Diana pain for years before dealing the final blow. After his sister's death, Diana's brother slammed the media, saying that they had made Diana's life so miserable she'd considered leaving Britain to get away from them. While Diana was always charming and charismatic, the media ran hot and cold. Coverage could turn on a dime, flipping from loving and praising Di to shaming and humiliating her. Once again, Diana found herself fighting to earn love and attention, just like when she was a little girl. We can't imagine how hard that must have been. Not to mention, the media's non-stop coverage amplified her body image struggles and her extreme measures of controlling her weight. She couldn't even go to the gym without people taking pictures of her to sell to the tabloids. Talk about an invasion of privacy. Diana's relationship with the press was so toxic that it even affected her children. Even today, Prince Harry regularly calls out the press and lives in a state of fear that they'll treat his wife the same way they treated his mother. Years after Diana's early passing, the impact of what she went through is still felt by the royal family. Diana never stopped looking for love. Even though her marriage to Charles was a royal disappointment, Diana still believed that love was out there. Sadly, all of her relationships ended in heartbreak. In a series of recordings, Diana spilled all the tea on her royal life. In those tell-all tapes, she confessed to being in love with her bodyguard, Fairy Manaki. She was so crazy about him that she said she would have given up her royal life. But their story ends in tragedy because Manaki died in a motorcycle accident in 1987. Diana also had a famous affair with her riding instructor, James Hewitt. But he didn't measure up to her fairy tale. Not to mention, he went on to write a book about their affair. Not classy at all. In a later interview, Di threw some shade, saying, "Yes, I was in love with him, but I was very let down." She also had a rumored affair with art dealer Olivier Hoare, but it wasn't meant to be. Apparently, he ended things when his wife threatened to divorce him over the scandal. It's no secret that Diana is an icon. For many, she represents a fairy tale come to life. But she was also a person, one living with depression, insecurity, and abandonment issues. She wasn't just a princess, she was a girl who desperately wanted love and never stopped searching for it. Diana's fairy tale may have been a nightmare, but she fought it with smiles and kindness, always treating her subjects with compassion. And isn't that what a princess is supposed to do? What do you think about Princess Di's ups and downs? Was she doomed to an unhappy life? Was she just doing the best she could? Let us know in the comments below.